As a fully grown black man who grew up in the hood, shout out to Miami Gardens, Carol City, if you know, you know. Of course, I like a woman with a great posterior, a great backfill motion, something that you can hold on to on cold nights and appreciate during the warm summer days. Yes, I like a good backfield motion, of course. But years ago, before this became a thing, within media, a woman having a nice backside was kind of frowned upon. In fact, it was nearly the exact opposite of how beauty standards were viewed prior to 2002. Yeah, in the 1800s, I believe it was, they had the cages around mainly hot women's rear ends to make them look more fuller under their big gowns. But at some point in the early 1900s, especially, a woman with a more slim frame with just a few curves, with just enough curvature on the body was the ideal. And this carried on throughout the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and part of the early 90s. Nice, slim, model-less women were the picture of beauty. The most you could be was top-heavy. You could have a nice slim frame, small backfill motion, but if you were top-heavy, then it was cool. I mean, in fact, one of the biggest things, along with having facial surgeries, nose jobs and stuff, were chest implants. So yeah, being top heavy was the thing with a nice slim frame back in the day. And I remember when the change occurred. It wasn't overnight, but I do remember when it happened. In my humble opinion, it started when J-Lo really blew up. Now, when she first came out, she was getting some recognition. She played Selena in the biopic and things of that nature, had a few songs out. But it was still mainly in the hip hop communities and Latino communities where having a nice backside was praised. See, around that time when J-Lo first started blowing up, in between when she did the movie Selena and started putting out her first few singles that charted, it was still frowned upon. In fact, example number one. This came from an episode of the Steve Harvey Show when they tried to hook up Bullethead, the character, with this girl here. The joke of this episode on why Bullethead didn't want to holler at her is because she had a larger posterior than normal. I remember this episode very well because brothers at the school that I went to at the time, when we saw the episode, we were like, dang, what Bullethead tripping? Boy, I'd be all on that, boy. All that ass? Shoot. You know what I mean? That was the reaction in the hood, but with the mainstream, it was seen as a joke. Another example of the mainstream at that time not accepting women with large posteriors, especially hot women with larger behinds, was here in this scene in Bring It On, where the fake choreographer picked on this girl for having a so-called bigger butt than usual. Keep in mind, this movie came out when J-Lo really started gaining steam in her career, right? It was still seen as frowned upon for mainly white women to have big butts. See, I'll never forget, in 2002, that's when it really happened. When the change really started occurring. Mainly when J-Lo blew up everywhere. She was known as a triple threat. She could dance, she can so-called sing, and she can act, right? Now, the thing with J-Lo, what makes her so special, even though she had a nice backfield motion, nice little bubble back there, larger than the average, she still had European enough features. Yes, she was Puerto Rican, but as I stated, she had enough European features to where the mainstream could accept her as somebody that's beautiful, somebody that can be put on the top 10 beauty list and be fetishized over or what have you. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, around this time, that's when the switch started occurring. Now, there were other Latin beauties within Hollywood with European enough features who were accepted, who had great curves, Sofia Vergara and Eva Mendes, but J-Lo had a bigger bum than both of them. Once the idea of a Europeanized hot woman with a nice posterior was accepted, they started getting thrown all over the place. All of a sudden, in mattress actress world, use your imagination when I say that, they started getting accepted. They started being debuted in different movies and things of that nature. And then dudes, rappers started throwing the thick white girl inside of their music videos and stuff like that. And then you had more women started coming out, such as Flower Tucci, which is the woman right here, Kelly Divine. And then when Kim K's tape dropped and she became a celebrity, i.e., a more Europeanized hot woman with a nice backside, when she got accepted, that's when everything changed. Now, all of a sudden, from like after 2002 up until now, every woman wanted to have a nice behind. If they weren't going in for surgeries or what have you, then they simply would just gain a ton of weight, realize that a lot of their weight is going to their backside, and be like, you know what? I'll just keep the weight. Yeah, she got a gut, but long as she got that butt, she'll accept it, right? Or they'll go to the gym and try to build a behind, you know what I mean? Doing hella squats and back kicks and all that, you know what I mean? All of a sudden, you have women inside of the gym that treat every day like leg day. They're on every leg press, every squat machine in the world, trying to build that butt. Now, in terms of beauty standards, I don't know what's going to come next. Maybe, women that have nice legs will probably be thrust into the mainstream or what have you, or women with nice eyes. However it goes, for the time being, having a nice backfield motion seems to be the main thing. But it all started, from what I've seen, when J-Lo blew up in 2002. If I'm wrong, tell me in the comments. If I'm right, like, share, and subscribe. Y'all have a blessed day. Thanks for watching. You can check out our books on thefemdeshay.com and other online retailers.